Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International. Good evening, CJ.
Good evening, Alma, and good evening to everyone joining the broadcast. Here are tonight's headlines.
Taliban fighters manned checkpoints around Kabul's airport on Thursday as concerns built they were blocking Afghans from reaching evacuation flights, with the United States demanding safe passage.
The Department of Foreign Affairs on Thursday now reminded the remaining Filipinos in Afghanistan to prepare to leave at a moment's notice after 2 attempts to land failed.
And 5 days after a massive earthquake devastated southwestern Haiti, authorities are facing steep challenges to safely deliver humanitarian aid to the thousands of victims as the death toll passes 2,000.
And a wildfire that erupted outside California's state capital just a few days ago explodes to cover 54,000 acres, an 8-fold increase in 24 hours.
First, to the conflict in Afghanistan, Taliban fighters are reportedly manning checkpoints around Kabul's airport today as concerns built they were blocking Afghans from reaching evacuation flights, with the United States demanding safe passage. Take a look.
Actors. We have seen reports that the Taliban, contrary to their public statements and their commitments to our government, are blocking Afghans who wish to leave the country from reaching the airport.
Now, Taliban leaders have in recent days repeatedly vowed not to seek revenge against their opponents while seeking to protect an image of tolerance. Taliban spokesman Zabihullah Mujahid said that the new regime would be positively different from their 1996 to 2001 stint. Their rule then was infamous for an ultra-strict interpretation of Sharia law, featuring deaths by stoning, girls being banned from school, and women from working in contact with men. Now, the U.S. ultimately led the invasion of Afghanistan to topple the Taliban because they continued to provide sanctuary for al-Qaeda after the September 11 attacks.
Meanwhile, firing is heard in Jalalabad as residents protest over the removal of Afghan flags that were replaced with that of the Taliban, according to local media, after the group's takeover of Afghanistan, ousted by a U.S.-led invasion in 2001. Take a look.
لاریون کون کې راغو بیرقونه پلاسو زنده‌باد افغانستان او زنده‌باد بیرق ویل چې موږ دا بیرق باید به احترامي ونشي دی په تړه باندې موږ د لاریون کون کنه ویډیوګانې مو کې چې څنګه دي چوک ته داخله کراو رسیدو لاریون کون کې دغه ټیم کې زه تصویرونه اغستا چې یو ناڅاپي د شاده خوانه د کونداغونو گزارونه په موږ شو او مګي هوادو
نو پیدا څه مسله ده سوي دا خلک سوي افغانستان زنده باد. اخر اول ما بردند حکومت راضی.
Now, U.S. President Joe Biden said it had been impossible to leave Afghanistan without chaos, as the U.S. pleaded with the victorious Taliban to allow safe passage for people to flee. Amid desperate scenes at the Kabul airport, where American forces are racing against the clock to evacuate tens of thousands of people, President Biden stood by his decision to end a 20-year U.S. war in Afghanistan in an exclusive interview with ABC News' George Stephanopoulos. Take a look.
When you look at what's happened over the last week, was it a failure of intelligence, planning, execution, or judgment?
Look, I don't think it was a failure. Look, it was a simple choice, George. When the Taliban, let me put it another way. When you had the government of Afghanistan, the leader of that government getting in a plane and taking off and going to another country, when you saw the significant collapse of the Afghan troops we had trained, up to 300,000 of them, just leaving their equipment and taking off. That was, that's what happened. That's simply what happened.
But we've all seen the pictures. We've seen those hundreds of people packed into a C-17. We've seen Afghans falling.
That was 4 days ago, 5 days ago.
What did you think when you first saw those pictures?
What I thought was we have to gain control of this. We have to move this more quickly. We have to move in a way in which we can take control of that airport. We're going to do everything in our power to get all Americans out and our allies out.
Does that mean troops will stay beyond August 31st if necessary?
It depends on where we are and whether we can ramp these numbers up to 5,000 to 7,000 a day coming out. If that's the case, they'll all be out.
Because we've got like 10 to 15,000 Americans in the country right now, right? And are you committed to making sure that the troops stay until every American who wants to be out is out?
Yes.
How about our Afghan allies? We have about 80,000 people.
Well, that's not the estimate.
Is that too high?
That's too high.
How
the
many?
estimate we're giving is somewhere between 50 and 65,000 folks total, counting their families.
Does the commitment hold for them as well?
The commitment holds to get everyone out that, in fact, we can get out and everyone that should come out. And that's the objective. That's what we're doing now. That's the path we're on, and I think we'll get there.
So Americans should understand that troops might have to be there beyond August 31st.
No, Americans should understand that we're going to try to get it done before August 31st.
But if we don't, the troops will stay.
If we don't, we'll determine at the time who's left.
And
if there are American forces, if there's American citizens left, we're going to stay till we get them all out.
Now, former Afghan President Ashraf Ghani says he left Afghanistan to stop bloodshed and chaos in a post to his Facebook page, but adds that he is in talks to return home after seeking refuge in the United Arab Emirates. Take a look.
در آخر برایتان یک پیام مهم دارم. من قصد فرار و جلاوطنی ندارم. فعلا در امارات هستم تا از خونریزی و فاجعه جلوگیری شده باشد. همین حالا در مشوره هستم تا به افغانستان برگردم و به تلاش‌هایم برای تأمین عدالت، حاکمیت افغان‌ها بر کشورمان و اعاده ارزش‌ها و دستاوردهای واقعی اسلامی و ملی مردم افغانستان با هم مبارزه کنیم. که پاتې وای د افغانستان جمهور رئیس به یو وار بیا د افغانانو د سترګو په وړاندې په دار ځړول شوی وای او یوه لویه شرمناکه تاریخي فاجعه به بیا تکرار شوی وای. تاسو ته معلوم ده زه د عزتمند مرګ نه ډارېږم او نه ویډار سوی یم، اما د افغانستان بې عزتي د ما د منلو وړ نه وه او نه ده. نو زه مجبورم له افغانستانه وویستل شوم.
Your question. We saw the announcement by the UAE this morning that Ghani had been welcomed by the government, and that is that.
And there's no reaction? I mean, does the United States...
He is no longer a figure in Afghanistan.
How does this...
Ghani making his first appearance since leaving Kabul on Sunday as the Taliban encircled the capital, a departure that ultimately resulted in their full takeover, reiterated that he had left in order to spare the country more bloodshed. The United Arab Emirates announced earlier in the day that it was hosting Ghani on humanitarian grounds. He succeeded Karzai as leader of Afghanistan in 2014.
Meanwhile, the Pentagon Staff General defended on Wednesday the U.S. military's response to the Taliban's breakneck seizure of power in Afghanistan, saying no one foresaw the collapse of the U.S.-trained Afghan forces that fast. Take a look.
However, the time frame of a rapid collapse that was widely estimated and ranged from weeks to months and even years following our departure. There was nothing that I or anyone else saw that indicated a collapse of this army and this government in 11 days. The Taliban are in and around Kabul right now, but they are not interfering with our operations. Through the State Department, the Taliban are facilitating the safe passage to the airport for American citizens, that is, U.S. passport holders.
Now, critics have faulted the State Department, U.S. intelligence, and the Pentagon for not anticipating the debacle and preparing earlier for the evacuation, which involves more than 10,000 U.S. citizens. Douglas London, the CIA's former counterterrorism chief for South Asia and then an advisor to Biden's presidential campaign, said U.S. intelligence had predicted the Taliban would defeat Afghan forces and that it was possible the government would capitulate within days.
In other news, Britain announced a resettlement scheme for Afghans fleeing the Taliban after their return to power, offering an initial 5,000 places in the first year, rising to up to 20,000 in the long term. Some 900 British troops have been sent back to the Afghan capital to help repatriate thousands of UK nationals, including embassy staff, following the Islamists' return. London said priority would be given to those most at risk, including Afghan women, children, and others forced to flee or facing threats and persecution from the hardliners, offering them a chance to remain in Britain indefinitely. Let's listen in.
Here is an update in the United Kingdom. Britain on Tuesday announced a resettlement scheme for Afghans fleeing the Taliban after their return to power, offering an initial 5,000 places in the first year, rising up to 20,000 in the long term. Some 900 British troops have been sent back to the Afghan capital to help repatriate thousands of UK nationals, including embassy staff, following the Islamist return. London said priority would be given to those most at risk, including Afghan women, children, and others forced to flee or facing threats and persecution from the hardliners, offering them a chance to remain in Britain indefinitely. Let's listen in.
I thank the British government for announcing this. It's a good news. We appreciate this. However, they need to prioritize the people who have served the government, the UK armed forces in Afghanistan in the past 20 years.
I can't explain it. When I saw them, and I can't stop my tears. And at the moment, I'm very depressed now, and my parents, and I still contact with them, but they are hiding, and all of the interpreters are the same.
This resettlement scheme will be kept under further review for future years, with up to a total of 20,000 in the long term, the Home Office said in a statement. The scheme is modelled on that which resettled 20,000 refugees from the Syria conflict from 2014 to this year. In the restive southern Afghan province of Helmand, Britain had 9,500 personnel and 137 bases alone. and its involvement came at a cost, with more than 450 troops killed. Prime Minister Boris Johnson wants an urgent meeting of G7 leaders to prevent Afghanistan spiraling into a humanitarian disaster, calling for a unified approach and ramped up aid funding. Britain has come under fire for cutting its foreign aid budget and tightening immigration rules after its exit from the European Union, including for migrants. It has also faced pressure to do more to help resettle Afghan interpreters who helped the military after the Taliban was ousted in late 2001. The latest announcement is separate from that scheme, which expects to relocate 5,000 former staff and their families by the end of this year. 2,000 have already arrived. The Home Office said since Saturday, the eve of the Taliban's capture of Kabul, 520 British nationals, diplomats, and former Afghan staff have left Afghanistan on military flights. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, I'm Kathleen Eusebio. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Kathleen. The Department of Foreign Affairs today reminded remaining Filipinos in Afghanistan to prepare to leave at moment's notice after 2 attempts to land a repatriation flight failed on Wednesday night. Now, out of the 90 Filipinos who remain in the South Central Asian nation, at least 79 were confirmed to have asked for repatriation. Now, the DFA said in a statement that the agency continues to work to repatriate remaining Filipinos there, exhausting all avenues to ensure that their safety and eventual evacuation. Filipinos still remaining in Afghanistan are further advised to be prepared to leave at a moment's notice and to be able to travel with minimal luggage, it added. 2 attempts were made to evacuate the distressed Filipinos via New Delhi and Islamabad, but both were unsuccessful after the cancellation of all commercial flights in the capital Kabul, according to the agency. The DFA also said that access and even within the airport is very difficult. And if able to check in, there's still no assurance that a flight would be able to leave. But some Filipinos have been able to leave with the help of foreign employers. And on Thursday, at least 7 Filipinos were able to fly to Qatar and another 5 to the United Kingdom.
Authorities reported that at least 80 Filipinos are still waiting for the government-chartered plane to land in Kabul, Afghanistan from Dubai in the United Arab Emirates after the original flight was deferred on Tuesday night amid the chaotic situation in the Afghan capital's airport. Joseph Glenn Gumpal, president of the Filipino community group Samahang Pilipino sa Afghanistan, or SPA, is hoping the flight would leave as soon as possible, citing reports that the Hamid Karzai International Airport is now clear. Meanwhile, the Overseas Filipinos or Overseas Workers Welfare Administration thanked the DFA for its close coordination in securing the welfare of the Filipinos in the host country. Let's listen in.
Chair Popoy de Vera ng CHED. Okay, we are closely coordinating with the DFA. Sa team ni Secretary Locsin at sa DFA, pinag-utos si Secretary Bello na we coordinate and partner with the DFA kung kakailangan ng tulong natin sa pagpapauwi kasi walang Filipino Overseas Labor Office sa Afghanistan. Sa ngayon, ang bilang ng DFA ay 135 ang mga OFW sa Afghanistan. Nagkaroon na ng first repatriation flight 2 days ago ang paglapag nila, o may 3 days ago, I'm sorry. And yun na nga, nagkaroon ng arrival ng 35 Afghanistan OFWs at they are now safely billeted in a hotel quarantine facility. In fact, dinalaw ko sila doon kahapon. Kinamusta ko sila at okay naman sila. Ngayon, ang naiiwan na lang sa Afghanistan ay around 100 na kailangan ilikas at sa pagkakaalam ko, meron ng sinasaayos, USEC, na second repatriation flight. Sa tingin ko yung 100 na yan, mga 3 o 4 pa yan na repatriation flight. Nag-utos ni Sec Bello na gawin ng lahat para tulungan, i-assist ang mga nanunumbalik nating OFWs from Afghanistan. And nagsimula kahapon, yung pagdalaw ko sa hotel quarantine facility, ang briefing na sa kanila. In-inform ko na rin sila kung ano yung mga benepisyo nila. Magre-revolve yan around financial assistance, livelihood assistance, saka scholarship assistance, lalo na doon sa mga collegiate level dependents. Nandiyan dyan yung Dole ACA program ni Secretary Bello, nandiyan dyan yung Tabang OFW program, yung 30,000 cash assistance ni na Sec Bello at Chair Popoy de Vera ng CHED, kung saan may 30,000 pesos one-off cash assistance sa mga college dependents ng returning OFWs displaced due to this pandemic. And then meron tayong livelihood. Meron tayong individual livelihood. Yung 20,000 pesos kung active OWA member, 10,000 pesos kung inactive OWA member. And then meron tayong group livelihood up from 100,000 to 1 million pesos kung nagsanib puwersa ang mga OFWs para magbuo ng negosyo. So yun po, umiikot sa livelihood, scholarship, and cash financial assistance.
And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
This portion is brought to you by North Luzon Express Terminal.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Araw-arawin ng ngiti, araw-arawin ng saya. Happiness kada umaga.
Magtanim ay di biro at sa pag-aalaga ng mais, walang kakornehan dito dahil ang kita ay panalo. Iisa-isahin natin ang ilang pwedeng lutuin. Ganon din ang iba pang produkto mula sa buhok at balat ng mais. Ako po si Robin Padilla. At ito po ang ulat, kaagapay sa hanap buhay.
Sa hanap
Welcome back. The death toll from a massive earthquake in Haiti soared past 2,000 as relief workers warned of challenges to aid efforts 5 days after thousands of people were left homeless. Take a look.
Moi réalisé sous chaque discaille, c'est une qui campe, mais cependant il va bon que le bon. C'est-à-dire que c'est caillou qui fissuré net, il pas en mesure pour mon entrer en bas. Et ça fait soit pour avec Matosana même, c'est un sens de mobilisation que m'a fait pour chaque monde qu'on son petit caille, la caillou pour qu'on son petit caille priorité parce que caillou il pas en mesure pour arrêter en bas. Toute caille yo tombé, ça qui pas tomber que de camper c'est bagaille qui pour t'acaser.
Le problème c'est le matériel. Comment est-ce qu'on peut travailler sans avoir un matériel disponible? Ce que je ne comprends pas, c'est, je serai honnête, je ne comprends pas comment est-ce que quelqu'un peut utiliser les patients, cette situation pour avoir un capital politique.
The country's Civil Protection Agency said the number of people killed in Saturday's devastating quake has risen by almost 250 to 2,189. The quake also injured at least 12,268 people and damaged or destroyed tens of thousands of buildings in the Caribbean nation, which has still not recovered from the devastating earthquake of 2010. On Tuesday, many Haitians left with no shelter by the 7.2 magnitude earthquake had to endure lashing winds and pouring rain as Tropical Storm Grace passed over the country. Even before the powerful earthquake, Haiti, one of the world's poorest countries, was already racked by a mounting COVID-19 crisis and political chaos that culminated last month with the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse. The government has declared a month-long state of emergency in the 4 provinces impacted by the latest quake.
A first coronavirus case has been detected in the Paralympic village days before the games open, according to organizers, as Japan battles a record wave of infections. The case involves a games-related member of staff who is not resident in Japan, according to organizers who did not give further details. Organizers have so far reported 74 cases linked to the Paralympics, mostly among contractors and game staff who live in Japan. Another 6 cases have been reported by local areas hosting teams for training camps. There have not yet been infections reported among athletes in the village, which opened to Paralympians on Tuesday. The Paralympics open on August 24 with around 4,400 athletes from approximately 160 teams set to take part.
The effectiveness of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine against COVID-19 declines faster than that of the AstraZeneca jab. That is according to a new study published today. 2 doses of Pfizer-BioNTech have greater initial effectiveness against new COVID-19 infections, but this declines faster compared with the 2 doses of the Oxford AstraZeneca, according to researchers at the Oxford University. The study, which hasn't been peer-reviewed, is based on the results of a survey by Britain's Office for National Statistics that carried out PCR tests from December last year to this month on randomly selected households. The study's findings come as Israel is administering booster shots after giving 58% of the population 2 shots of the Pfizer jab. The U.S. is also set to offer booster vaccines to boost antibody levels following concerns over declining effectiveness of the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines. The Oxford research also found that protection was higher among those who had already been infected with the virus.
The U.S. government says it will make COVID-19 booster shots available to all American adults beginning next month, as it warns that vaccines are showing a declining effectiveness against infection. Take a look.
These are data from... I want to be clear, the president's whole of government vaccination effort is ready to get every American who needs one a booster shot. Pending FDA and ACIP approvals, boosters will be available starting the week of September 20th.
If you are fully vaccinated, you still have a high degree of protection from the worst outcomes of COVID-19, severe disease, hospitalization, and death. So we are not recommending that you go out and get a booster today. Instead, starting the week of September 20th, fully vaccinated adults could begin getting their booster shots 8 months after their second shot of an mRNA vaccine.
Given this body of evidence, we are concerned that the current strong protection against severe infection, hospitalization, and death could decrease in the months ahead, especially among those who are at higher risk or who were vaccinated earlier during the phases of our vaccination rollout.
The booster mRNA immunization increases antibody titers by at least tenfold. These are data from Moderna, but Pfizer has announced very similar data. Last slide. And so in summary, the current immunological data that indicate that antibody levels decline over time, higher levels of antibody are associated with a higher level of efficacy, higher levels of antibody may be required to protect against Delta, and as I showed you on this former slide, A booster mRNA immunization increases antibody titers by multiple fold. All of this support the use of a third booster mRNA immunization.
The move comes as scientists and health experts grapple with how to beat back the surging Delta variant of the coronavirus and follows extensive debate over whether a third injection of the Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna vaccines would be appropriate. Anthony Fauci, the country's leading infectious disease expert, pointed to studies showing significant drops in vaccine protection over time. For instance, figures released by the Mayo Clinic showed that the effectiveness against the Delta variant slid from 76 to 42% with Pfizer's vaccine and 86 to 76% with Moderna.
Meanwhile, the World Health Organization condemned the rush by wealthy countries to provide COVID vaccine booster shots, while millions around the world have yet to receive a single dose. Speaking before U.S. authorities announced that all vaccinated Americans would soon be eligible to receive additional doses, WHO experts insisted there was not enough scientific evidence that boosters were needed. Take a look.
Extremely complicated because obviously we have not many studies, we have different vaccine, we have the emergence of variants, and we have different population groups. But what is clear is that we do not have sufficient information, and the data are not suggestive that at that point in time we need booster vaccinations.
I think, though, regardless of what ultimately the science comes to an agreement regarding the length of protection or the increased benefit from marginal increase in benefits from having booster doses. The reality is right now, today, if we think about this in terms of an analogy, we're planning to hand out extra life jackets to people who already have life jackets while we're leaving other people to drown without a single life jacket. That's the reality. Science is not certain on this. There's clearly more data to collect. But the fundamental ethical reality is we're handing out second life jackets while leaving millions and millions of people without anything to protect them.
Malacanang today advised the public to stay cool and await the final report, as government agencies still have the chance to explain the deficiencies cited by the Commission on Audit, or COA, in its 2020 audit report. Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque, in a virtual press conference, reiterated that government agencies flagged by COA should be given the chance to respond to the spending report last year. Take a look.
Findings. Well, narinig nyo naman po ang reaksyon ng Presidente. Una-una sa kanyang karanasan po, yung mga initial observation, nasasagot po yan ng mga ahensya. Sa karanasan nga ng Presidente, 2 beses pa siya dumulog sa hukuman, no, para i-correct yung maling conclusion or observation ng COA. Sa ngayon po, preliminary pa lang po yan. Magsusumito ng komento, pagkatapos po magkakaroon ng final report ang COA. Doon sa final report po, yan ang po pwedeng magamit na ebidensya sa hukuman. No? Pero hindi lang po yan ang hihinging ebidensya ng hukuman, isa lang po yan. Kinakailangan meron pang ibang mga testigo para mapatunayan kung meron nga pong paglabag doon sa ating batas on graft and corruption. So sa ngayon po, ang aking advice, cool muna po tayo. Dahil itong puntong ito po pwede pa pong sagutin at antayin po natin ang final reports.
The COA has released its 2020 audit report flagging deficiencies that need to be explained by the government agencies, but the public immediately perceived as irregularities in the use of public funds. In his pre-recorded talk to the people aired Monday night, Duterte said the COA found deficiencies in the DOH's allocation for COVID-19 response efforts because of incomplete paperwork.
In other news, Hong Kong's decision to grant Hollywood star Nicole Kidman a quarantine exemption as she films an Amazon-funded series about the lives of wealthy expats has sparked public anger. The Chinese financial hub maintains some of the strictest quarantine measures in the world, an approach that has kept virus cases low but left most residents cut off from overseas loved ones for the last 18 months. Arrivals from the high-risk countries have to stay in hotel quarantine for at least 21 days, while lower-risk countries have 7 days hotel quarantine, followed by a further 7 days of self-monitoring. But Kidman, 54 years old, has been allowed to circumvent those rules. Hong Kong's Commerce and Economic Development Bureau confirmed the Australian actress and other film crew had been granted an exemption to carry out designated professional work. The city's tabloids have closely followed Kidman's appearances in Hong Kong since touching down last Thursday in a private jet from Australia, including shopping 2 days after her arrival and later filming in the city's Saiwan district.
In other news, thousands hit the streets in Buenos Aires, Argentina, to protest against President Alberto Fernandez's government. Take a look.
El gobierno y las clases dominantes en la Argentina tienen que entender que las organizaciones sociales en los barrios, así como otros sectores de la iglesia, referentes barriales y demás, fuimos el dique de contención para frenar en el marco de la peor crisis de la historia el estallido social.
They're demanding more aid to combat rising poverty in the country. The Argentinian government announced it would ease coronavirus restrictions after weeks of declining case and mortality figures. The pandemic has worsened an already difficult economic situation in the South American nation, where 42% of the country's 19 million people lives below the poverty line, and the unemployment stands at 10.2%.
A wildfire that erupted outside California's state capital just a few days ago had now exploded to cover 4,000 or 54,000 acres by Wednesday, an 8-fold increase in 24 hours. At least 2 people had to be airlifted to hospital as the Calder fire tore through a small town around 80 kilometers from Sacramento. Thousands of people have been told to seek safety with the blaze raging uncontrolled through the El Dorado National Forest. In a stunning demonstration of the way these blazes transform, the Calder fire, which began on Saturday, grew from around 6,500 acres on Tuesday morning, fanned by strong winds and huge reserves of tinder dry fuel. The Calder fire is one of scores raging across the desiccated western U.S. as man-made climate change alters weather patterns and brings chronic drought to the region. Climate change linked to the burning of fossil fuels has made the region drier and hotter for longer, creating ideal conditions for the blazes to rage.
In other news, dropping winds and cooler temperatures raised hopes Thursday that France's worst summer wildfire could be contained as firefighters entered a
Now, the fire started on Monday evening at a motorway stop in the south of France, with flames ripping through the arid plain des Martres Nature Reserve towards the glitzy Riviera resort of Saint-Tropez. More than 1,000 firefighters have been in action using helicopters and water-dropping Canada aircraft, while 10,000 residents and holidaymakers have been evacuated in the area. The fire is the latest in the Mediterranean region that has also seen major blazes claim lives in Greece, Turkey, Italy, and Algeria in recent weeks, with numerous officials blaming climate change. And the news continues. Still here on Eagle News International. We'll be right back.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups Micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Your weekly dose of entrepreneurial inspiration to update you on the latest developments in the world of business. Get up close and personal with CEOs and thought leaders to help you discover valuable insights. Sharpen your instincts for smart decision-making with the latest markets and economic trends, disruptive ideas, global innovation, social entrepreneurship, and other leading-edge business ideas. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business, from vision to action.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced, eagle news, because we live in interesting times.
Welcome back. Major U.S. cryptocurrency exchange Coinbase Global Incorporated started operating in Japan today, according to its local arm, as virtual currency investing intensifies in response to the impacts of monetary easing policies implemented to cushion the global economic fallout from the coronavirus pandemic. Now, according to Mainichi News, the entry into the Japanese market by Coinbase KK, which directly sells and buys major cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin and Ethereum based on customer orders, as well as facilitating transactions, is expected to intensify competition among similar burst operators, including the Tokyo-based Bitflyer Incorporated and CoinCheck Incorporated. Now, the boom in demand for Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies since around the world latter half of the 2020 led to increased valuation of coins and tokens, although volatility has seen large fluctuations in prices.
In other news, the Bank of Thailand plans to test its retail digital currency for the public in the second quarter of 2022 as an alternative payment option, an assistant governor said today. Now, the retail central bank digital currency, or CBDC, will not affect monetary policy or money supply in the system, Bachira Aromdi told a news conference. The pilot project will evaluate the use of the CBDC in cash-like activities within a limited scale, such as accepting, converting, or paying for goods and services, he said. The Bank of Thailand predicts demand for the CBDC will gradually increase and that it could become an alternative payment option, partially substituting cash and e-money, it said in a statement.
Now, in recognition of its 107th anniversary as well as its 53rd year overseas, the Iglesia Ni Cristo, or Church of Christ, recently received recognition from the Hawaii state government. For more, here's Alfred Acenas from our EBC Hawaii Pacific Bureau.
This is a message for Brother Eduardo Manalo. We want to thank you on behalf of the State Senate and the State House.
The Iglesia Ni Cristo Church of Christ has received another form of recognition, this time in the courtyard of the historic Hawaii State Capitol.
Those in attendance included ministers from the District of Hawaii Pacific led by Brother Noel C. Caritativo. Senator Bennett Misalucha and Representative Sunny Ganaden hosted the presentation on behalf of the state government.
We received the certification, a recognition for the 107th anniversary of the Iglesia ni Cristo Church of Christ.
The citation within the certificate describes the global church as an organization that contributes greatly to the well-being and vitality of the communities being served, and that it embraces all people regardless of race, nationality, social standing, or educational attainment.
In times like this, we should help each other, especially those people who are in need. We do our best, everything that we can to help them in a way that we can.
Not only are we thankful to God and celebrating the 107th anniversary of the Iglesia ni Cristo Church of Christ all over the world, we are also celebrating its 53rd anniversary of the church being here in the state of Hawaii. We hope that we may continue to be of help to the community through our various projects being done in our church all over the world.
To our beloved Executive Minister, Brother Eduardo V. Manalo, sir, we would like to thank you for your constant guidance and help. We would continue to unite with you to all the projects and all the activities that we are doing inside the church.
Iglesia ni Cristo has been a partner in ministering to our kababayans here in Hawaii, and not just to our kababayans, actually to the greater community, particularly in humanitarian missions and humanitarian efforts. So on behalf of the government of Hawaii, I want to thank you again, and we hope and pray that you will continue your efforts and that the partnership between Hawaii as well as INC will continue to be robust and will provide the necessary support for our people. Aloha.
Reporting from Honolulu, Hawaii, I'm Alfred Asenas, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Thanks, Alfred, for that report.
I missed Alfred. And, you know, Alma, these kinds of aid, humanitarian aid, they're really much needed at this time.
Yes.
So good job to everyone working on making those happen, especially there in Hawaii.
Congratulations to everyone. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I am CJ Hero. Please join us again tomorrow.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. We'll see you back tomorrow. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.